Howdy folks, my name's Cody Maxwell, Fannin County Extension Agent for Agriculture and Natural Resources with Texas A&M AgriLife Extension. We're coming to you with our second part in our series that we're talking about on weaning calves. And this time we're going to be talking about tips for success for weaning calves. Those of you that's watched our first program in this series, we'll go back and kind of recap some of those to lead us up to the point that we're at right now. But the first program that we talked about weaning calves, we talked about the methods of weaning. And in that, we talked about the trailer method for weaning calves. We talked about the corral method for weaning calves. We talked about the mechanical weaning device that you can actually put into a calf's nose that prevents them from nursing from the cow. And then we talked about the fence line weaning method. We're going to continue on this program to kind of build you up to that next spot on thinking about the tips for success when weaning those calves. And to start off, we'd like to talk about paying attention to the environment that we're dealing with. Now, we all know that, most people are going to typically, for our area in North Texas, are going to be spring calving cow herds. Most people are going to start about February and conclude their calving in about April here in our area, which means that puts us up for a fall weaning period on those calves. And our typical weaning time usually is going to be about the October time frame for our area here with those spring-born calves. Some may be right at the 1st of November. Well, during that time frame of the year, we're going through that transitional time frame when we're kind of closing out those hot winter months and hot summer months and moving into our cooler fall and winter temperatures that we typically experience here in North Texas. Those of us that have been here for a while know that those temperature swings can be drastic at times. Sometimes we can go from 90s one day down to the 50s the next day with the Arctic blast that can come our way. That's why we mention tips for successful weaning when we say pay attention to the environment. We don't want to wean those calves right before we have a cold front coming in that's potentially going to bring rainfall. What can happen during those times is it can create a little bit of stress on that calf. Not only stress from being separated from its mother, but when we start incorporating some of those environmental conditions, those cooler, colder mornings, incorporate a little bit of precipitation in with that, that's when we can start seeing some of those sickness problems, specifically respiratory problems, start popping up in some of those calves. And that's some things that we're trying to avoid during that weaning period. So number one, whenever looking at this, we want to pay close attention to the environment situations during that time of weaning. Number two, we want to perform our castration, dehorning, and other health management practices prior to weaning. So what does that all entail whenever we're looking at that? Well, number one, the castration. Hopefully we've done our castration much earlier on in the life of the calf. Whenever we think about our processing times with those animals, hopefully we've done that castration whenever that calf's about 2 to 3 months of age. If we haven't, then we want to make sure and do that 2 weeks prior to weaning that calf. If we're using some bulls, or if we have some influence in our cow herd that might bring out some horn traits in some of these calves, if you're using Hereford bulls, we know that that's obviously a breed that's going to carry that horn trait with them, specifically the horned Hereford breeds. But if we do have some calves that pop out with some horns on them, then we want to take care of those by dehorning them calves 2 weeks prior to weaning. If you do see those little horns start popping up earlier in life, if you're able to catch those calves on the first processing time, when those calves are about 3 months of age, we like to go ahead and typically take those nubs off about them. But if they slip by us and we don't see those horns pop out until later on in life, we want to take care of that 2 weeks prior to weaning as well. We have on here other health management practices prior to weaning. Well, those herd health management practices that we're going to recommend is a modified live respiratory complex. That's going to include your IBR, your PI3, your BVD, and your BRSV. We want to make sure that that's done. Also, a series of 7-way clostridial vaccinations given at the same point of these viral vaccines as well. If we can get those done 2 weeks prior to weaning these calves, that allows us to wean that allows us to run that calf through the chute, get a vaccination in that calf prior to weaning. That way, whenever we do wean those calves, we strip the calves off the cows. That's already done. That calf's already been ran through that chute. That way, that minimizes some of that stress that the calf's going to have to go through during that weaning phase. If you're not able to do it 2 weeks prior to weaning those calves, we really don't like to do it on the day of weaning. We simply just want to strip those calves off those cows during that weaning day. So if you're not able to get it done then 2 weeks after weaning is going to kind of be our last resort on that. So that's what we're talking about on our herd health management practices for these calves is giving a modified live respiratory complex and a 7-way clostridial. Also, we want to administer pastorella during the first round of vaccinations on those calves. Other things that we also want to do too that's herd health best management practices is give an internal and external treatment for internal and external parasites. That's done usually through dewormers, and so we want to administer a dewormer on those calves as well. So, number 2, for tips to success for weaning, perform castration, dehorning, and other herd health management practices prior to weaning those calves. Number 3 in our tips for success for weaning these calves is we want to wean the calves for 45 to 60 days. Those of you that may be on here that are familiar with our Texoma Beef Cattle Alliance that we have here for North Texas, Southern Oklahoma, we have a minimum of a 45-day backgrounding program on those calves. You're going to see some beef cattle marketing alliances that have a 60-day backgrounding phase for those calves, and so that's going to be about the typical time frame. You may, with your situation, you may be targeting a special stocker sale on these calves, so you may end up weaning these calves for 75 to 90 days, just depending on when you calve, when you wean, and then your target for market on these calves is going to help determine the time of weaning or our backgrounding or preconditioning phase for those calves. But we want to go at least a minimum of 45 days on those calves. And then number 4 on our tips for success for weaning, you heard me mention it before. I'm going to mention it again. On the day of weaning, it's best to just separate the pairs and not do anything else. In our previous program, in part 1 of weaning calves, we talked about the different methods that you can wean these calves. If you're going to be fence line weaning, it's going to be our most recommended practice for weaning methods on these calves that we recommend through Texas A&M AgriLife Extension. That's going to be probably one of our most least stressful situations for weaning these calves. But the calf's going to be able to see mom. Mom's going to be able to see the calf. The only thing calf's not going to be able to do is nurse from mama. And so if you are weaning in a corral weaning method, if you're stripping these calves off the cow and hauling them to another location, it's going to be a little bit stressful for those calves. Not having mama around, not, telling this calf, hey, you need to go drink out of that water trough that's over there. It's got fresh, clean water in it. Or, hey, you need to go over and eat out of this feed bunk that's got feed for you that's going to promote health for you. When the calf doesn't have mama around, it can create a little bit of a stressful situation. We try to minimize those things if at all possible, but with those stressful situations, we want to alleviate as much stress as we can. That's why we recommend that on the day of weaning that you do nothing else other than strip those calves from the cows. Now, obviously, you may want to, if depending on your timing of weaning those calves, whenever you have all those cows up, You may want to pregnancy test those cows while you have them up. If you're hiring on some help, that way you keep your day labor down. You may want to get those cows pregnancy tested during that time, and you may also want to do your fall deworming on those cows at that time if the time permits during the time of the year for you to do so. But back to the calves, on the day of the weaning, we recommend that you do nothing else but just simply strip those calves off the cows. I hope that this segment has been beneficial for you. Again, invite you to subscribe to our YouTube channel at Fannin County Texas A&M AgriLife Extension. We'll post more programs up on there, but this will be the second program in our weaning series. It'll be part 2. I hope you've enjoyed it. If there's anything that we can do for you, again, my name's Cody Maxwell, Fannin County Extension Agent for Agriculture and Natural Resources with Texas A&M AgriLife Extension. You can give me a call at 903-583-7453 or send me an email at cody.maxwell@ag.tamu.edu. Also, if you can send us an email, we'll get you in our email distribution list. That way we can keep you up to date with all of the programs that we do through Texas A&M AgriLife Extension here in Fannin County. Hope you've enjoyed the program. We'll look forward to coming to you next time with more information.